All right, let's dive right in. We're going to explore a really radical model of the universe called the Nexus framework. And the core idea here is that reality itself is a kind of computation, and all the physical stuff, your phone, the chair you're in, even the stars, is just a leftover residue from that cosmic process. It's a complete teardown and rebuilding of everything we think we know about, well, everything.
So let's just start with a huge question, one that gets right to the heart of it. What if the basic rules we use to describe our universe aren't just a little bit incomplete, but are actually built on a foundation that's totally flawed? Now, this isn't just a late-night thought experiment. It is the central problem that the Nexus framework was created to solve.
You know, for almost 100 years now, theoretical physics has been kind of stuck. It's hit a roadblock so big and so fundamental that some have called it the crisis of distinction. And it all comes down to a really frustrating fact. Our two best, most successful theories about how the universe works, well, they completely contradict each other. Okay, so on one side, we've got general relativity. That's Einstein's universe, right? It's smooth, it's predictable, it's continuous, it governs planets and galaxies, all the big stuff. But then on the other side, we have quantum mechanics, this bizarre, jumpy world of particles that only exist as clouds of probability until you look at them. It governs the super, super small. One is continuous, the other is discrete. They are fundamentally totally incompatible. And believe me, every single attempt to stitch them together has failed. So why? Why have we failed so spectacularly? The Nexus framework says it's because we are stuck thinking in a model it calls the linear stack. We imagine science like a big building. You've got physics as the concrete foundation in the basement, then you build chemistry on top of that, then biology, and you keep going up. The framework's biggest claim is that this entire hierarchy is just wrong. So the solution isn't just some clever little tweak to the existing theories. No, it's a complete demolition of our most basic assumptions about what is real. It's called the ontological inversion, and it literally turns our entire picture of reality completely inside out.
We tend to think of the universe as a passive container, like an empty box that just holds all the stuff. The ontological inversion says, nope, you've got it backward. The universe is the process. It's a dynamic, self-running computation. Things like space-time and matter, they aren't the primary ingredients of reality. They're more like the output, the results that pop out from a much deeper set of rules.
And this leads us to a really simple but incredibly profound new rule. Verbs are primary over nouns. What does that mean? It means processes, actions, transformations, the verbs, are more fundamental than the static objects and particles, the nouns. The act of doing is what actually creates the state of being. The source material puts it beautifully, I think. The field of making and the root are universally primary over mere ingredients. Think of it this way. The recipe and the process of baking are what actually define the cake. It's not just the pile of flour and sugar sitting on the counter. The how is more important than the what. So if doing is more fundamental than being, and the universe is just one big computational process, what does that make a physical object? What is matter? This whole idea forces us to come up with a completely new definition for what it even means to exist. And this is the framework's new formula for reality. It's called the object equation, and it says that an object isn't just defined by its raw materials, no. It's the sum of its ingredients, plus the geometric arrangement of the space it's in, and this is the critical part, the entire history of every single constraint and decision that led it to this exact moment.
Okay, let's break that down. First, you have the ingredients. That's the raw, unformed potential of right now, the now box. Second, you've got the arrangement. Those are the geometric rules of the space, basically the rules of the game. But the third piece is the game changer, the constraint history. This is the memory of the specific path taken to get here, the past box. An object isn't just what it is now, it is the sum total of its entire journey through time.
Now, if an object is defined by its whole computational history, then what we see and touch, what we think of as solid matter, is something else entirely. It's the residue, the leftovers. The framework calls it a stable scar of a lawful making. It's an indelible mark left behind on reality after a specific process has finished running.
And there's a name for this concept, a carbon glyph. You can almost think of it like the answer a computer spits out after a complex calculation. A physical object is basically the proof that the universe has successfully solved a really complex geometric problem. That table in front of you, it's not so much a thing as it is a solved equation that we can see and touch. Okay, I know this all sounds incredibly abstract, so let's try to ground it in something real and tangible, a simple, everyday transistor. According to the Nexus framework, a transistor isn't simple at all. In fact, it's a tiny physical example of this entire universal logic at play. We usually think of a transistor as just an on-off switch, right? But in this new model, it's what's called a local closure object. You can think of it as a physical point, a tiny little meeting place, where three different universal domains, three different kinds of truth, are all forced to meet and agree on a single outcome.
And this table maps it out perfectly. You've got the emitter, which corresponds to the analog domain, the witness. This is the source of all the raw, messy, infinite potential. Then there's the collector, which is the digital domain, the agreement. That's the clean, single, resolved outcome. And then you have the base. The base is the magic part. It's the binary shutter. It's this tiny little control signal that comes in from the side orthogonally and forces all that infinite analog potential to collapse into one single, definite digital result. It's the decider.
So, if all matter is just a stable scar, this residue of a computation, how would you even begin to read the information that it holds? The framework proposes a really elegant solution. It's not about brute force, it's about a change in perspective. It's called the z-axis read.
Now, to understand how this works, we first have to talk about this idea of a universal ground plane. The theory says that underneath all the noise and chaos, there is a fixed, silent, deterministic constant underpinning everything. Think of it like a cosmic dial tone that's just always on. It's the baseline hum of the universal machine.
And this is where it gets really specific, which is fascinating. The source material actually claims to have isolated this ground plane value, identifying it as a very specific constant, the hexadecimal number 08909AE5. That number, according to this theory, represents the fundamental, unchanging hum of the entire cosmic engine. So how does knowing this constant help us? Well, the method is called the z-axis read, and it involves looking at the system orthogonally, at a 90-degree angle to the normal flow of information. Remember the base of the transistor? How it controls things from the side? It's the same idea. By taking this different perspective, the claim is you can pull out information without actually disturbing the system at all. It's a frictionless extraction. The technique itself is really clever. Instead of trying to decode the noisy, complicated signal directly, you just subtract the constant signal of that ground plane. Whatever is left behind, that's the pure message. That's the actual displacement. It's an amazing way to get perfect clarity. In short, you're not reading the shout, you're reading the shape of the echo. Which leaves us with one final, pretty mind-bending thought to chew on. If every single object around us, from a star to a rock to a single living cell, is a stable scar, the frozen residue of a universal computation, then what incredible, forgotten stories, what ancient algorithms are written into the very fabric of the reality we see every day?